Bhutanese Nepali community in central Ohio is an ethnic Nepali Bhutanese citizens who became the victim of ethnic cleansing in the 90s in Bhutan. After 2 decades in the UN refugee camps in Nepal, they came to the United States as part of refugee resettlement program. Today, according to the Ohio State University, an estimated 24,000 live in central Ohio, making it the largest Bhutanese Nepali community anywhere outside Bhutan. In making of this video, the Community Digest, we tried to include 3 key events of life embedded in the cultural practice: birth, wedding, and death. The idea is to simplify Bhutanese Nepali cultural practice on 3 key events of life. Bhutanese Nepali has their own unique ways to mark these key events. Bhutanese Nepali culture developed in the South Asian subcontinent, which is ingrained in the age-old Hindu Buddhist philosophy. In this part of the video, we present to you Deepa's narration to illustrate how a birth of a child is celebrated and ritualized in a typical Bhutanese Nepalese family.
Hi, my name is Deepa Giri. I'm 22 years old. I came to the United States when I was 14. I lived in Georgia for 3 years and then moved here with my family. I graduated from Northland High School and then went to college for 3 months. And then I decided to get married, and now I have a son. His name is Austin and he is 22 months old. When I got discharged from the hospital, and then I came home and they welcomed my baby and me. And after you gave birth to a baby, for 11 days you cannot go to the kitchen and cook for yourself. So my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law helped me. They would prepare a meal for me. Usually in Nepali culture, when you just give birth to a child, they will give you a specific kind of soup. It's called juano. So it will help me to get strength to breastfeed as well. On the 11th day after the baby is born, there is this ceremony called Naran. This is the first ceremony in the life of a Nepali. During this ceremony, a baby is named after some rituals are performed. So usually, Nepali people, they have two names, like the one that they gave in the hospital. That's what they wanna call. And then we have another name, and that's what the Naran is for. It's called Naran name. During that ceremony, the priest will give the letters, and the names should start with the letter given by the priest. Even the syllable are predetermined. They will already say how many letters would be in the name. So Austin's real name is Austin, and he has another name. The Naran name is Yuvraj. Usually my father-in-law can do the rituals, and at that time we call our close relatives, family members, neighbors. That's the time when people will gather to see the baby for the first time. So gifts are accepted. They will put a black dot, it's called teacup, in their forehead. They believe it is to protect them from evil eyes or supernatural powers.
We witnessed Deepa's story of how Austin became part of her family and a new member of a community. In this part, a couple share their experience of getting married in a new culture and new country.
My name is Hari Adhikari. I am married to a beautiful woman of my dreams. Her name is Sila. She's right beside me today. It's been almost 2 years since I got married.
I was just a student before I got married, and I just worked part-time at University Hospital. When we decided to get married, I was very excited, and I was pretty nervous and sad as well because I had to leave my parents' house.
From the cultural point of view, the parents, most of them, have not been as acclimatized to the US ways of life, so they still expect their son or daughter to get married in the traditional fashion. But then also there is the other element of some people changing their lifestyle. Some people don't want to get married the traditional way. It's mostly love marriage now. Mine was love marriage too, but then if I ask my parents and their parents, their answers would be different though. In terms of getting married here in the US, obviously it is different than how marriages happen back home. In our culture, what happens is the groom goes to the bride's house. There is actually the bigger portion of the ceremony happens at bride's home. After the ceremony ends, the groom and bride, they come to the groom's house married my wife, she was living in Pittsburgh. So I ended up going to Pittsburgh. We did the majority of the ceremonial work in Pittsburgh. Got back to Columbus later that day. Next day was our reception, and we did that at a hotel here in Columbus. And we had invited families and friends from our side. So it was a 2 days occasion really. That's what seems to be the trend here in the States. Because many of our people are committed to long distance relationships. So what happens is usually the guy or the girl has to travel to one or the other's place, get married, have majority of the ceremonial rituals done there, and then go back next day and have some kind of reception for the families. In some states where we have not that many people, they are challenged with getting a priest to actually do the ceremony, because just like a Christian marriage, a priest has to summon this marriage. In terms of general kind of thing that I've noticed is that our society is very patriarchal. It's the girl that goes to the guy's house, not the other way around. It is very sad occasion for them because they're leaving their families, their parents. Unfair amount of burdens are placed on brides than groom. For example, in families, what I've also noticed is that parents want their daughters to get married right after they finish high school or even college. Guys are not as pressured. Sometimes it's really the parents' pressure that forces the marriages to happen. I want to address something that people have noticed about our marriages, right? I mean, there's way too many people that are coming into a house. The reason behind that is we are a very tight-knit community. They always expect you to sort of go to their events, rituals, so that they could come to yours. So if you don't invite them, they will be offended. You may not even be able to speak to them. It's also primarily down to the fact that our extended families are so much closer. I may end up inviting even my pretty distant cousins to my wedding, whereas that may not be the case at the American wedding. So then, there is a vast sort of like a complex network of kinship that goes on in the culture, that it is quite common that at ceremonies like marriages, even in death ceremonies, you end up seeing so many people, hundreds of people.
In this part of the video, we look into a highly ritualized and amazingly kept alive, 1,000 of years of practice of mourning the death of a family member in a typical Hindu-Buddhist way.
All cultures, all communities understand death differently. In Nepali community, I think that death is also a time of reflection. It almost has a communal aspect to it, that communities come, gather, remembering of families, because families have a very different, almost like a spiritual meaning in communities, as an oppressed subject who've been kicked out from their homes, losing lands, right? So children, youth have incredible respect for parents, because this person has protected me, protected the community. It is almost losing a person as a library. It's a historical person, it's a library, it's a person of the community that has kept the person, the family together, the community together, especially the elders in the family. So when elders of the family die, you're almost losing like a very link young people have to the ancestral homeland. So there's a very different layer to this. The ritual really depends on what kind of a family you come from. But it always has an element of being alone, being with family members, really deeply thinking, right? This also includes eating a very special kind of food that relaxes you, right? So you're talking about having vegetables allowed, no meat allowed, right? Wearing very simple clothes. So it almost brings you back to a very humble life.
And one of the other very significant death rituals, especially observed by Hindu community, among the Bhutanese community, is the Puranas. Puranas have a very ancient history, mythological and spiritual connection ingrained to it, and it's part of liberating individual soul, especially of the deceased family member, and trying to get that reunited into the cosmic soul. And doing a Puranas is a long process, especially it takes so many days to do, and it's so much important that if those Puranas are done or observed, family feel that the soul that has just released from the body would be able to get reunited or be one with the universal or the soul of the God. So it's what we relate to the concept of moksha, or what we call is renunciation with the God.
And I think for mainstream communities it's difficult to understand because it's not a one-day thing, it's not a two-day thing, but it takes a number of days. So this is almost like a designated time, right? So, but the time, how many times, days of mourning really depends on the family. Because of our society, the time has decreased. It used to be perhaps 2 weeks long, but now it can be 7 days, 10 days, depending on the context. But whenever the employer asks these questions, they need to really understand that this time is very, very special, right? It's more than birthday, it's more than Christmas, it's more than Thanksgiving, it's more than some of the big festivals in Nepali context. Death has a very, very deeper meaning. It connects you to the families and communities. People need to be very respectful because cultural differences. You may have employers who may not understand this. You may have schools and universities who may not understand this. I think neighbors need to know each other really well. Having that cultural knowledge or cross-cultural communication is really, really important, because I think it's because of not having the knowledge, right, that the community may have complaint, right, having a neighbor inviting so many people. In Nepali communities, the death, as I mentioned earlier, has a very communal part of it, right? So it's not going to a funeral home, it's not going to a certain location, right, a public, but house becomes a very important place or designated place. So if the city government is willing to send information out, right, or let the neighborhood know, maybe neighborhood association might be a very good way to get the information out, saying that there's a Nepali community here, they're having a particular event, right, this event takes place in a certain time of the year, or sometimes it happens all of a sudden because of a death.
The first concern that we have in the community, especially observing these rituals at home, is to educate our community folks to follow certain protocols, certain principles, that the neighbors don't feel disturbed. And on the other hand, the neighbors, the community should also feel that the Bhutanese Nepali community is also a part of our community, bigger community. And since Bhutanese Nepali community is new to the United States and adjusting to the ways of lives, they are still learning on the one hand. On the other hand, most of the rituals are so difficult to be followed elsewhere, practiced elsewhere. On the other hand, some of the rituals are to be done at home. So we are trying to work out in the community to create a space, a common space, where everyone can go and worship, do their rituals, celebrate the rituals, but also the community should accept that certain rituals are so much difficult to get out into a big community hall or a temple and do it, and we should be understanding more than like being critical to each other.
In the final part of this video, we will hear how community leaders and resettlement agencies are working together to integrate the Bhutanese Nepali families in Central Ohio.
This is a resettlement agency, and we've been working with the Bhutanese Nepali community for probably 8 years now, I would guess, when we started resettling people directly to Columbus. So it was a brand new population for many in our community, myself included. We start from the airport when they first arrive, help them get settled in their initial housing, get furnishings, do social security appointments, health screening, school enrollment, all those things that need to happen in the first 90 days someone's new to the country. And then after that, we've worked with many Bhutanese Nepali to help them with job placement and English classes. We have a mentorship program. I think we're going on our 3rd year now that works with a lot of Bhutanese Nepali youth and mentors. And then a senior program as well that works with Bhutanese Nepali senior citizens defined as 60 and older. We work with folks that we directly resettle We've seen many of Bhutanese Nepali community are coming from other places as secondary migrants. The number has really mushroomed in Columbus to, as community members estimate, between 20 and 25,000. Good majority of them, I think, have come from other places once they've learned Columbus is a welcoming community and they see others doing well here and that the community is organized. So we've been really fortunate to work with alongside of community groups like BCCO and other groups trying to help make that transition as smooth as possible. One way that we've worked with BCCO, the Bhutanese community of Central Ohio, has been with our wellness program. Knowing that there's some mental health challenges in the community, that's one way we've really partnered with this community organization to have yoga classes, to work on mental health referrals, to specifically target that. Really understanding how important it is for community members to be together, to have that time to congregate and to not be isolated and to have support from within. So that's been a really positive way I think we've been able to be involved with the BCCO. I think this community has particular resilience and incredible work ethic. People are really want to work, willing to pool resources for the good of the family or the good of starting a business together. So there's really a unified spirit within this community. The effort to help one another, to know what somebody else is going through when they're new, to really help the newcomers with their adjustment period. I think the leadership in the community is a real strength. It seems to be particularly unified, from my perspective, from what I've seen, has a number of very highly respected leaders that seem to work well together and have really helped to bring the needs of the community to the surface, to the local government, so that this community's voice is being heard. I see how in a really relatively short period of time, Bhutanese community are becoming homeowners. That's pretty impressive, to come here and start with nothing and to already, own your own home for the first time, to have a place to call your own is impressive from my perspective, and I think from many others. I think some of the struggles may relate to things like substance abuse. Having spent many years in a camp, decades in a camp without any resolution, you can understand why people might have substance abuse challenges. So I think that's one. There are also mental health issues because of the transition to a new life here that we've seen surface in the Bhutanese Nepali community. Problems with suicide that haven't been present in other refugee groups that I've worked with. So that's certainly another need. But so encouraging to see how Bhutanese and other refugee groups treat their elders. I think that's something I've always particularly admired about working with refugees is the way that they value and they elevate the stature of their senior citizens.
Bhutanese community is very vibrant and really resilient and has a lot of achievement they have made in the last 10 years when I talk about schools, business, home ownership, and all those contexts. At the same time, whenever we move to a new country or migrate or immigrate to new places, there are also many challenges. So challenges, number one, very high struggle in terms of mental health. But language and the culture is the biggest problem for the people to access the need. But the solution to all these challenges is integration. And integration happens with the conversations. When we do interact with the people from different groups, those solutions have been found. But the problem here, we have a limited opportunities for people from both the communities to come together and learn from each other. So that could happen in a different context. One is a school, other one is a police, other one is city. I think as a city, we should have some kind of openings for people from other cultures and communities, well as a platform to come and talk. And my other part of my job is I volunteer, and I'm also an activist. I'm working at a different capacities from federal to state to city levels. So on regular basis, we have been in touch with the different cities here in Central Ohio and also state legislature to explain them. Some of the concerns of the community could be addressed. So we are meeting with the city council members, telling them the constraint of the resources that we are experiencing at the present moment to address those needs in the community and also at the state level. I think at the end of the day, participation from the refugee community needs to get involved in the mainstream community and educate themselves. That's one area. as well as equally important is the mainstream community who are service provider needs to learn about all different communities who are present in the central Ohio. Because at the end of the day, those representatives, whether city councils or state rep or federal representative, they are there because of these communities, and these communities are taxpayers. They should understand it, as well as the people in the Bhutanese community or other larger immigrant refugee community should understand that they are the citizen today, and they also do have a civic responsibilities. Being a citizen is a great thing for us because we have been denying citizenship right for all these years. At the end of the day, when we have those rights, we also have responsibilities.